Welcome to Andy D. Cole's podcast. Please like, share and subscribe.
Welcome to Andy D. Cole's podcast. Press like and subscribe.
Welcome to Andy D. Cole's. Sit back and enjoy. As we dive deeper down into the rabbit hole and into the unknown.
Hello and welcome to today's show. I'm joined by Sarah for now. That's not a surname. That's a temporary surname.
Sarah for now.
And Nicole. Peter will be coming on in a second. We just got a couple of updates that we're going to do. First one is there are another 2 streams this week. Friday we have got Dr. Ian Rubinstein, who's a practicing GP in North London. And then on Sunday, Nicole, we have...
Who do we have?
Staticom, the
We
full
have
setup.
Staticom Project. Yeah, we have Ron Yacovetti, we have Lourdes Gonzalez, we have Tony Rothman and Cherie Rothman.
So we have the full house, don't we?
Yep.
So we've got that. Then a week on Saturday, we've got the Global Skywatch. Still looking for a couple of people if they're interested in doing it. It's literally... as long as you got a phone, tablet, computer that can link to StreamYard, all you got to do is point your camera up at the sky. Microphone will be muted, and if you see anything, I'll just make the screen bigger, and that's pretty much that. So, I think that's it. Anything else before we bring Peter on?
No.
No. All good.
Let's bring
Right.
him on.
So, welcome to today's guest, who is Peter Robbins. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you, Andy. Much appreciated.
No, thank you for coming on. I had to steal you quick before Chris Evers did. that was the plan. So, yeah, thanks for coming on. So, for those who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself?
Well, I'm primarily an investigative writer specializing in the subject of UFOs, in particular, the truly anomalous ones that are machines of obviously advanced design, under intelligent control, and implications for humanity of this part of reality. I'm also, among other things, a radio show host, program that's been running now well into its 4th year called Meanwhile Here on Earth. And it's broadcasts Mondays from 7 to 9 Eastern Standard, midnight at 2 a.m. your time, so a bit late.
Yeah.
On KUNX Digital Broadcasting.
Cool. I was just working it out on my fingers then, because I know it's 5 hours. So I just couldn't add it up quick enough. So how quickly, how do you find the radio different to podcast? Is there much difference in it?
There is in the doing of it, but once it's done, it functionally is a podcast, a recorded show that is archived and available to, folks that want to seek it out. But the difference is working live. And I could choose to record all my shows and, when glitches come up, as they do, edit them out or, do fine tuning. And I prefer working live in part because the name of the show is Meanwhile Here on Earth. It covers I gave it a name that could give me a lot of latitude. My guests are usually UFO or paranormal related, but certainly not always. They're people living interesting lives, and often the thing that we go after is how did they become the people they are? And so it's an opportunity for an in-depth 2-hour conversation interview with whatever current projects are cooking. But specifically, things screw up all the time, and you deal with them. You know, people drop out. Guests change at the last minute, sometimes the very last minute. And as you're introducing somebody, you're realizing, they're not going to be on. And I like that rough-edged quality that those broadcasts have sometimes. And it's just another way to go.
Yeah, because I think... Sorry, go on. Go on,
we
Nicole.
don't know anything about that, do we?
No.
I think the other thing is there is something, even if it's going to be listened to, if it's a really, compelling interview or guest, well into the future, there is something about having the option to watch or listen to really what may well be a really interesting conversation while it's actually happening.
That's why I like doing lives, because you kind of know what's going to be going on, but you don't have full control over it. And like you said, if something happens, you've got to, you've got to be quick on your feet, but it doesn't always
doing
happen.
all the editing.
Before we went on the air, you asked me if there's anything in particular I wanted to talk about, and I said no. Whatever you guys would like to talk about. And then you asked me something that I will sometimes ask guests because I'm curious. I want to know how they became that person that I admire or respect in the world of film or writing or whatever their specialty is. And I will sometimes ask them if there is something that they don't want me to ask them about. And usually they're good enough sports that they know I'm going to draw a line and not put them on some terrible spot if I find something interesting I want to dig into while we're talking. These are not rehearsed conversations. At the same time, it can be rather funny. One guest basically said, okay, just don't ask me about my first marriage and whether my kids were abducted by aliens. And I thought, I can live with that for show. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, that's an easy one, isn't it, really?
Mm-hmm.
Because I just love doing lives. I think there's a lot more to it than a pre-record. I don't mind the pre-records, but you've got that feeling inside you that I can't even explain what it is.
Well, I'm glad to do it if the guest schedule or the potential guest schedule is can only be accommodated in that way, or when I have guests on who are in Europe or the UK who would rather not begin a 2-hour recording session at midnight or 1 a.m., which is very well within the Geneva Conventions.
I like the lives because I like the interaction that we get from the chat too on YouTube and Facebook. It's nice to have that real-time interaction with your audience where you can get real-time questions for the guests and everything like that. Speaking of which, put your questions in if you have questions for Peter.
Yeah, good plug.
Don't make me look bad now that I said that.
I agree. I like the unpredictability sometimes and the laughs that you have.
Because I think with the pre-record, it kind of, even though it's not scripted, you kind of feel you're in that column, that box.
Yeah, because you can change it, can't you, afterwards in like post-production? You can edit that out.
Yeah, I prefer this because I don't know what I'm going to say till I open my mouth either. I've got a first question for Peter. It's going down the Roswell road. Why do you think Roswell was or is the most famous UFO case, even though there's been tons more incidents similar to that around the same time on a bigger scale?
Probably a couple of reasons. The first is that we can argue or discuss or fine-tune our ideas about when the so-called modern age of UFOs began. There were certainly credible sightings and alleged events and incidents that go back not just well before 1947, but millennium before. It's just that it's commonly agreed that the summer of 47 with the Kenneth Arnold sighting and then the Roswell incident kicked off the official era. And because Roswell was so well dealt with by the forces that be, the ridicule factor regarding the UFO, the flying saucer phenomena, literally came into being at the same moment in time in, post-war history. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, little green men, all that stuff. And that became the most extraordinarily powerful weapon against people taking it seriously in public, because it had been so hardwired into, the Western consciousness that taking the phenomena seriously is just shorthand for I'm crazy or a mystic or a con man or, a contactee or some kind of goofball, when in fact it may be just what it may be, a representative of advanced technology. Anyway, I'm drifting a bit here. Roswell happened because the only nuclear strike force in the world, the 509th Bomb Wing, the part of the Army Air Corps that dropped the 2 atom bombs on Japan that effectively ended World War II, departed from hangar, I think it was hangar 2, at the Roswell Army Airfield. The debris and the remains of the occupants were brought to that hangar and then flown out to 8th Army headquarters in El Paso, I think it was, in Texas, all in, early July of 1947. When the story broke open around 1980 or so, it captured the public imagination to an extraordinary degree. And more, people, it's like, why study history? There's so much happening right now. Well, one of the reasons that it's happening right now, especially the things that we'd rather not be happening right now, is because we don't study history. And each generation, to a degree, keeps forgetting or loses interest in now. Look at all the distractions just in the electronic world that we live in. And these handheld devices that run our frigging lives. I think Roswell hangs on in part because the more you dig into it, the more respectable the evidence is. It's not just a bunch of, people who are dead now who had accounts of what may or may not have happened. The amount of evidence you could bring into a court of law is really impressive. I think also because popular culture grabbed onto Roswell once it was out there. And it's so woven into the fabric of children's cartoons and advertising, and of course, films and novels and graphic novels. And now, of course, it's mainstream culture. And it's almost strange if you don't take them seriously, because, the fear of ridicule has pretty much evaporated for most people. The way I can put it, with a straw poll of going to events and being somebody that people talk to about their thoughts and feelings around this, is every year more and more people care less and less what other people think about what they think about the subject of truly anomalous UFOs. And that's a really healthy thing. But it's relatively new in the past few years. and it's just growing.
Yeah. So what? Obviously, you don't think it was a weather balloon, but what? What do you think happened? Just your personal thought as to why it crashed, or was it brought down?
My personal thought is, just mine, although
Yeah.
other people share it.
Yeah.
And it's based on a respectable amount of reading, of meeting and making friends, and then colleagues of people who I consider the most responsible in the way they've approached their research, specifically regarding Roswell. And I'm proud to say they included the late, great nuclear physicist Stanton T. Friedman, who was the real pioneer of breaking that story open back in the late 70s or 1980 or so. And also Tom Carey and Don Schmidt, two of, I think, our finest researchers in the area. Kevin Randall, right up there with them as well. I also had the privilege of working for the city of Roswell for several years, organizing, helping to organize their conferences each year, and cooler, being the liaison for the city to New Mexico at the time, Governor Richardson, who had a real interest in the subject, which he kind of had to back away from as a presidential campaign, getting a lot of ridicule for it.
Yeah.
But I've visited Roswell, I'm sure, at least half a dozen times. I'll be back there this summer for their conference, and I hope to visit the area. I guess what I'm saying is, based on more than just looking stuff up on the internet. I think that what went down was a machine of unearthly origin, and that the Army Air Corps responded ferociously to cover it up, and hundreds and hundreds of troops over the immediate after time out there picking up every tiny fragment of material that they could, each one classified above top secret. But things get out and people confirm each other's accounts, and then there are deathbed testimonies, etc. But I think, I think I definitely do not know what caused this thing to crash. It certainly could have been weather related. There was that night, was it July 1st, I think, a respectable thunderstorm, a major storm in the area there. And I guess some people romanticize them to such a degree that they're infallible. Their machinery is so advanced it can't possibly fail. But I think the rule is the more complex, machinery is, the more likely. And it could have been some kind of part failure. But allegedly, at least one of the occupants survived. And there's all kinds of myth and lore and legend about that for me just remains in that slot as myth, lore, and legend. We all, it goes back to kind of the mantra of the X-Files poster. I want to believe. We all want to believe certain aspects of this. We want it maybe to fit the picture in our mind that we're most comfortable with about them versus us. But it's all speculation, isn't it?
Yeah. No, thank you for that.
What are your thoughts on the recent disclosures that's been happening in front of the Senate and Congress? Do you think we're getting the whole picture or just a very small part of the picture?
I think we're certainly not getting the full picture. I'm guessing that what's publicly been made available so far is a very small part of it. What's positive, what's exciting, what's good about it, even though it's mostly been a kind of kabuki soap opera of a nice handful of elected officials. I'm glad to say, seemingly on both sides of the aisle politically, who are more interested in the subject than they're concerned about people laughing at them, because that doesn't work anymore. And more regular citizens are really interested in the fact that some area of government, in this case the House, part of Congress, is looking into it and doing their best as they look into it to educate themselves to how much there is to know and how much has been repressed. I think we're also dealing with, right behind that curtain, so to say, Nicole, a hierarchy of secret keepers who have been there for generations at this point, who we don't elect, who are very powerful, some of whom would probably be very relieved to have this all break open and be public and sorted out, and brave new world, here we are the ones who are probably actively doing what they can to slow down the process that has become known to a degree as disclosure process with a capital D. Some colleagues and friends and regular folks feel sooner or later government leaders or some major government leader is going to come forward and just lay it out and let the chips fall where they may. Others feel they're going to do anything they can to not do that. Part of the reason may be because in America, where the cover-up began, where the birth of the national security state around this subject in 1947, not around our nuclear capability, kind of followed suit in other countries around the world, that their biggest state secrets don't have to do with nukes, has to do with this phenomena. And that it's embarrassing to admit you've been lying for all the years and decades that you have. So there's a lot of ego involved, and fairly rigid personalities, and even people in the military intelligence community who are worthy of our respect. There's a certain, a mechanism, a character structure, where if you're in the world of keeping secrets, it's very difficult to give up the biggest one. And that brings up another question. This came up in another discussion I had on the air just a few nights ago, which is, it's one thing for a world leader or world leaders to go on television and someone just breaking the story, or all of them time it together. My fellow citizens, it's my serious responsibility to inform you, and blah blah blah. That they can't do that without, in this country, if it was the president, whatever president, it would be, for starters, an admission that every other president before them, starting with Harry Truman, is an unindicted co-conspirator in the biggest cover-up in history. And they're touchy about that. And it certainly has nothing to do with your political party or affiliation. And it would be the equivalent in the UK, whether, it's Labour or Tories. It's an equal opportunity employer, so to say.
Do you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if here in the UK that they use something like disclosure to get themselves elected in. I think that's next on the list. It's got to be, because they've done everything else and not stuck to it. So at least with this, you're getting some.
Yes, and there are political candidates in the States here, more regional or statewide, who are starting to run with that as, so to say, a campaign plank or a promise or a personal commitment. In fact, I'm having one of them on as my guest this coming Monday, who has run a number of times on a pro-disclosure platform in Utah, Nevada. Wyoming. I'm embarrassed to say I'm forgetting right now, but he's deadly serious about it, and people know who he is and respect his position. So
Right,
yes,
okay.
this is, I think, part of the politics of the future as we move forward.
Yeah.
Whether or not you believe that's what it is, like, it's one thing to just get it all out there and disclose the truth. Nobody can really be against disclosing truth.
Unless it hurts their interests.
Very true.
And the control over this information, I think, began rationally enough with the idea of it's 1947. You know, the world's a more innocent place, although we've just come through this gruesome thing called World War II. But America is really what many of us wish and dream it were right now. We had helped Europe defeat fascism, and we were actually taking the incredibly unheard of step of giving money to our former enemies to help them build decent societies. And the Marshall Plan worked really well when you think, how much trouble have Japan and Germany been to the world since 1945? Marshall Plan was amazing. And how can I say? I think that the forces that be, the men Truman surrounded himself with, understandably felt a threat because they knew that it was very possible that we're dealing with a truly other intelligence from parts unknown. And, you know, the way they're put together, it's all about aggression, beating aggression. If these things can fly, you know, circles around us now, we have to be ready to fight them because they're the unknown, and the unknown is scary. And that's the way we think. You know, they say to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you're in the military or the intelligence community, imagine in 1947 perceiving this as a potential threat. Yeah, I guess so. And if it were to break open, if somehow the secret were revealed, who knew what would happen to Western culture? And I think over time we've realized we can make this transition. It will be rougher for some people than others. But at the same time, we live in a world which is built on this lie. And where up is down and down is up as far as the truth about this subject goes and how deep it goes. So it's an icky process to start. And I think powers that be that move the chess pieces around and always have are just as happy that the American House of Representatives is now picking away at this. It's become kind of a spectator event. You know, there are folks who hang on every new development and every new whistleblower and every new politico that's starting to take it seriously, or new media figure who wants to start interviewing them on, you know, primetime shows. But it's a form of, it's fascinating. It's almost entertainment immediately and distracting us from the reality of it. I don't know how to say it exactly, but we are so used to processing information right now. And we're living in an age where we're often and may once again return to a much more chaotic day-to-day existence based on who's in power and what's blowing up where in the world, which is another way to take our attention off this general subject.
Yeah. No, totally agree. Because just listening to you talking about that, and whether it would be easier to come clean, even though they're gonna mess up what everyone else has said, given documented previous to that. If they was to just go, look, this is what it is. Yeah, we lied to you, but we did it out of like best interests. But this is it. This is what's going on, and then it's done. And then they don't have to hide. You don't have to hide anymore. It's out there. It's in the open, and it's like
it sounds so simple. Yeah, you're absolutely on the money. Except, good luck doing it. The other thing, a point I kind of lost the thread on a few minutes ago was I've thought about this for years. I'm a humanist and I care about people. And when you're in this work long enough, you often develop a sense that, well, I'm pretty much ready for this, and pretty much everybody I know is. So, logical extension, everybody is. No, they're not. They'll get used to it when they have to. As you know, human beings are amazingly versatile when we have to be. But at the same time, no, they're not ready for disclosure. No. And just an announcement by a world ranking figure that this simple. All those reports of UFO visitations over the decades, most of the time we've laughed about officially, a number of them, a percentage, were in fact highly advanced machines from parts unknown, from off the earth, under intelligent control, of beings who we can only theorize what they're about. And we've been doing everything we can since 1947 to convince you otherwise. That would be huge. That would be more than enough to change everything. However, how do you say that? And in this world where anybody can then go, oh my God, that's real. Always had the feeling it was, or gee, I talked to. They go online, or immediately stuff starts coming up on the internet because it's the nature of the beast. Well, what do you mean? There's something called hybrids. Wait, people are being taken? That's really true? Wait, children, there's some children that are part us and part them? Wait, this person had this happen to them and were put in a room when they were a child with somebody else that just to be watched and missing fetuses. And how do you dig half a hole? How do you begin the process in a way that's humane without, oh yeah, by the way, somebody has spent their life being taken. No, I don't know who it is, but that's their secret life. And it happens that often that somebody that this has happened to. It's shock upon shock upon shock. It's sort of like if you take the idea of Pandora's box and you open it and there's 100 more little doors in it and you open each one of them. Remember, we've been involved in thinking about this, in talking with other people about this, in reading books about this, watching documentaries, films for considerable time. And most people simply have not. It may not be something that they've never thought about. I think it's human nature for any relatively sane, open-minded person to look up at night and think about, the stars and life in space. And could it be possible? Well, be arrogant to think that we're the only out there, but that idea that everybody else, every other life form in the cosmos is microbial. And, it's not like Star Trek where you go from planet to planet of beings with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head struggling to mess up their planet as we've done ours.
See, what I think is crazy is the lack of reaction, because what's come out so far, people have not had their mind blown by, because it's like, okay, we've already known this. Most people don't really have a lot of trust in the government, that everything they've said is on the up and up anyway. So everybody was kind of like, all right, yeah, but what about student loans? But yeah, but what about this crazy inflation? They didn't really care. That blew my mind, because I thought it would be a bigger thing than it was.
I think you're right, Nicole. And part of that has to do with the way people process information now. More and more seems to mimic technology and the internet. Or at least we can visualize it more like that. The electrical synapses spinning away in our brains, not unlike the ones that connect us all with these invisible wires, in every corner of the world. That the idea of, oh yeah, life in space, sure. I've seen movies about that since I was a kid. I've, read books about it. I know people that have had UFO sightings. I'm ready. Yes,
Yeah.
there's that whole. I think what it amounts to is how it's going to happen. We can debate until it happens, which is a planned or a begrudging single government or world governments coming together and saying, okay, it's real. We're here, they're here, and that's the way it is. Or the process will continue. And every day in this country or that county or this town or this city, 8-19-4-3 period, people will take it more seriously. Why? They've had a sighting. They know somebody that's had a sighting. They've had an experience. They know somebody that's had one that they trust and respect. They've read something that really impressed them. They've seen evidences. They've watched a particularly good documentary. It will keep happening. And then there's the wild card of, I don't think we're going to see this unless there's some kind of extraordinary situation that would compel it. But that would be them basically saying, enough, okay, we've given you 100 years, well, thousands of years really, to consider this, and you're just not getting it. And you don't realize that this speck of dust that you call the Earth, that's roaring through space at 30,000 miles an hour, that's no bigger than a grain, a piece of dust, in a warehouse, in terms of where it fits in the cosmos. It's important to us as well as to you, and you're screwing it up, and you may be killing it. Maybe better that you guys, self-extinguish, and that this planet have a chance to heal, and the other species come back, and life become more healthy here. Who knows? I mean, we are the infestation on our host. It's a sad fact. I think a lot of it has to do with just our history as human beings. And one thing, no matter what else, that you can't get in people's faces about is tell them how many kids they can have. That's fascistic. That's, controlling their bodies, etc. But overpopulation has gotten us to the point we are at now. And it not only isn't stopping, it's increasing. This planet, more or less, 1 billion people, probably all good. And it's like, what, 9, 10, 12 now? And it's growing geometrically. It's another tangential problem to this transition from we are not alone, which there's that other thing called an environmental crisis that we're also involved in. And man's wanting to, in the name of God or whatever, or political divisions or what they feel is right, continue to murder each other over where the line is drawn in the dirt. It's another reason they, hypothetically, and it's a fair reason that's been put forward by a number of people, have no interest in making direct public contact, as opposed to coming and going on their own, and building their audience to a point where it may become a tipping point in the culture, in the population. That's something that really interests me. At what point do enough people have to take the subject seriously that some event or some release of information or some leak will be the straw that breaks the camel's back? For anybody that really wants to look at the evidence, come on, there's plenty.
Yeah. So do you think then that a lot of the people that are just shrugging it off, saying, yeah, whatever, do you think they're the ones that don't really believe that it's a real thing?
Well, let's just imagine that that's us, that we never, for any number of reasons, got interested in the UFO subject. We're out there. We've either got families or not. We've got jobs. We've got apartments or homes we're paying off, doctor bills to pay, kids that we hope will stay on the right track and, grow up, be healthy and happy. But this is not something we're thinking about or considering. And whether or not it might be in conflict with our religious beliefs, which certainly in extremist cases is, it's mystified terribly at the extremes, or mechanized either way. But I don't think those people are anything other than just regular, decent people who have never really had an inclination to think about stuff that's going to make them really anxious. Are you telling me that not only are we not alone on some of these flying saucer things and, triangle craft, they're really not ours and from other places, and that people are being taken, that it happens to kids? Oh my God, this is, I don't need this. This is scary. And we've known about this for how long? And you've been lying to us. I wouldn't want to be the one to be charged with making these decisions for our culture. It's a big series of questions. And again, there's no right way or wrong way. Well, I guess there are wrong ways to do it.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of wrong ways.
Oh, yeah. Public service announcement, aliens are real. Have fun.
Well, yeah. Again, the military mindset, which certainly has a say in our culture and our governments, is this could be a threat. So we need a whole new generation of weapons here, and we need to be on the offensive. I think the thing to appreciate here, there may be some that do not necessarily mean us well, but obviously not to the degree that they've manifested it in some kind of War of the Worlds way. We're all here. We're all, there's plenty of talk about them controlling the government from behind, and they're welcome to it on a certain level. And they may be, or they may not be. It's the stuff that conspiracy theories are made of, and that hardcore folks and that really love. It is what it is. Yeah. In the meantime, though, we are still free to follow our paths, generally speaking, if we have some breaks, to follow a dream, to try to achieve something in this life, start a successful business, fall in love, build a family. Nobody's stopping us there. And if they were the ubiquitous they, that we're talking about here, the active ones who were seeing their ships and people are having them visit them, etc., if they are evil and bad and, our enemy, where's the evidence? We all have models in our head from a zillion science fiction movies and books and, television shows of, when they're bad, they're bad. We're talking Mars Attacks. My favorite bad aliens, personally.
Do you think we register high enough on their radar for them to even mess with us? It'd be like us messing with an anthill.
That's a great question. The fact is, again, I joked about it, but it's not funny. We are spending huge amounts of our budgets, our time, our intentions, our political structuring, our policy decisions on where the line is drawn in the dirt. And if you cross that line, you're on my side of the dirt. And
You're muted.
Yep. No. Peter? You've muted for some reason.
Oh, there you're back.
Got that wired. Okay, good.
Yep, you're back now.
What are you saying about wires before?
I think there are, well, again, if they meant us bad, we'd know it. And if you have a military mindset, you don't want to think like that. They could be being deceptive. Well, sure. I think they're as capable of deception as we are, and may well have agendas we can only imagine. that might not be beneficial to us. But what are we going to do? The best thing to do, I think, is continue to educate ourselves, take the subject seriously, keep an open mind, even when, we have access to a great deal of information or are seen as someone in the work. All the more reason not to get stuck where you are if new evidence or new information comes to you that rationally encourages you to change your mind or your position on some aspect of this.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. We've got a couple of questions for you. I'll do the one because I know you're friends with Chris at Limits Magazine, Chris Evers. So I'll do his question first and I'll work through him. So Chris's question is, question for all. Most people ask for the strongest evidence to support the UFO subject, but what do you think is the weakest proof?
Good question.
What do we think is the weakest proof?
I'd say the weakest proof is lack of evidence or actual physical material.
The weakest proof for me would be videos of airplanes that people are saying are UFOs. You're like, look, it's a blinking light. Yeah, that's an airplane, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Well, you're really onto something there, Nicole. Unfortunately, if you have, there's some people caught up in this work, and it's very romantic. I'm involved in researching the UFO phenomena. You can be a little carried away with yourself, and I think some people go into investigations with an agenda, conscious or unconscious. They want things to be a certain way, and they hope they'll be able to establish it. The way one proceeds in open research, in the best research, is you follow the trail where it's going, and it leads you wherever it's going to lead you. And if the results are exactly opposite the ones that you thought you were going to get or you wanted, you got the results you got anyway. I think you're certainly right in saying that a lack of physical evidence is a weakness. There is a great deal of physical evidence, but it's not a spark plug or a carburetor,
No.
or an alien thumb. And that's what the world, it's out there. We are just not privy to it. And
well, that's what I mean. We're not being shown the actual physical evidence. That's what I know it's there, but we don't get to see it.
That will be a big BCAD, so to say, in terms of, say, congressional investigations, when somebody can produce some metallic fragment that we're unable to, refine on Earth, that mythical new metal or new hybrid kind of material, or again, something so undeniable. I think sometimes if there's an equivalent, during the Vietnam War, Dr. Daniel Ellsberg, who joined as a psychiatrist, joined the government to basically help with the war effort in his own way. And in fact, the more he learned in his privileged position, having a high security clearance, the more he felt the war was wrong and that it needed to be exposed. And if that meant the risk of going to jail, he's going to do it anyway. And he did. And that information, it wasn't like, oh, gee, somebody ran this off in their basement and it's, this man had the original paperwork and things began to change after that. It would be something if somebody, like a Julian Assange or Snowden would just drop information, of course, they would be hunted down and jailed if they could be, as they're trying to do with Assange right now. But it would be out there. I sometimes wonder, because there's so many extraordinary NASA photographs of anomalous stuff on the surface of the moon, Mars, that if it was all looked at, or a percentage of it was looked at together, allowing us to see these things clearly as they exist, and at a certain point with the understanding that, of course, we're always going to find faces in nature, and a lamb, a cloud in the shape of a lamb, it's always going to be there. Jesus on the tortilla ship. But the bottom line is, there is stuff that just goes well beyond any, fracturing of crystals, or there's stuff, built all over. And I think it'd be amazing. These photos in this age, where you just have to say the word Photoshop and all bets are off on the image that we're looking at. So you can immediately dismiss it, especially if it comes to you via the internet, except that so many of these images portray things that are not natural. I think that could be something, if enough of them came out and they had the right pedigree, that could kick part of this door open.
So are you familiar with the alien bodies that were shown to the Mexican Congress?
The alleged mummy, to a degree, and I'm not very impressed by them. Well, we're talking about two different sets of alleged beings. One that are somewhat intriguing to me and may well be what they purport to be, and other ones which just caused a great deal of embarrassment to people who shouldn't have had to go through it in the UFO research community, because somebody wanted to make a big splash and think sensationally, rather than in a scholarly or historic kind of way.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Right, are we good to go for a quick break? Is that all right?
We can keep going.
Oh, do you want to keep going then?
Yeah,
right, we'll keep going. I'm not going to argue with the boss. Right, so we've got a few. Yeah, do you want to do the next one from Sober? I'll pop it on. There you go.
So, this is from Sober Carper. Has Peter had any reports of alien beings coming out of craft that look like ours and not the typical UFO? Wings, engines, exhaust trails, noise.
Can you just restate that one more time for me?
So I think he's asking if you've heard any reports of alien beings coming out of things that look like something man-made, something that has an engine and wings, rather than the typical saucer or tic-tac kind of UFOs.
Nothing credible, and I've been looking into this for a lot of years, but no.
They never step off 747.
No, got an Airbus, couple of states over or something. No. Right. Next question. Oh, that's right. That wasn't even a question. This is from the Midnight Golfer. So he's asking, are they malevolent or benevolent, from your opinion, based on your research?
That's a great question. Again, we're dealing with a myriad of intelligences. People in the field sometimes will give a number. It's something I find absolutely absurd. There's no way anybody can know how many alien civilizations or interdimensional civilizations are visiting us. And anybody that tells you otherwise, I really wouldn't take too seriously. But are they malevolent or beneficial? I think they're both, because I think we're dealing with different intelligences coming and going for their own reasons. Again, Midnight Golfer, what I'm saying is all speculative. I don't know, because I've been involved in this longer than anybody listening. It's just my opinion, but I think it's the wrong question to ask. The malevolent ones are malevolent, the good ones are good. And, we can sort it out for ourselves. Again, if the bad ones were really bad, we would probably know about it, unless it's all going to come, it's all being worked out behind the scenes, and overnight things will transform into some kind of alien apocalyptic state.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out one way or another. It's either going to all kick off, or it's going to be all...
Yeah. Oh, but that makes me think of
bunnies and blue sky.
Do you think, Peter, that like one species of alien is all, if it's malevolent, it's malevolent, or, like the grays are good and the little green men are bad? Or do you think it's like the human race, where some are good and some are, like it's a spectrum?
In answering this question, again, I can't think, don't know that I have the capacity to think like them, but thinking like me, I think the model I use is the human model, that the whole sweep of humanity, we look considerably different from each other. There are certain traits that we carry. We are capable of deep pathology and incredible cruelty and, absolute carnage. Or we can be heroic and decent and thoughtful and empathetic. We get into trouble here when we try to pin down something that we still are only making guesses about. For years, I worked as the assistant to a wonderful artist and also a great writer, investigative writer and researcher named Bud Hopkins. Bud was arguably the pioneer, the father of the scientific study of the UFO abduction phenomenon. And one of the things, Bud had a wonderfully wicked sense of humor. And, there we are doing our best to be respectful to people that have had these experiences or feel they've had them. And at the same time, we and you, we all have to be good skeptics, especially if we take the subject seriously, especially if we have seen or experienced so much evidence that we no longer have the luxury of disbelief, to put it a certain way. But being a skeptic, even an arch skeptic, with an open mind, is completely different than being a debunker. And Bud used to make some wonderfully appropriate jokes about them. Debunkers are amazing. I mean, we should be looking up to them with great reverence and respect. They know the answers to unknowable questions. They know, for example, that UFOs aren't real, and that anybody that feels they are is delusional or misinterpreting something. And they're really here to kind of pat us on the head and explain away these crazy ideas we have that our planet may be being visited. And here we are, just doing our best to wrap our heads around what's going on. We don't have a theory. We're just trying to see it for what it is, but they know the answers. Give me a break.
I've got a question for you. I don't know if I asked you when you came on last month with Chris, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So all these different accounts of people seeing, whether it's nuts and bolts, UFOs or UAPs, whatever you want to call them, do you get many accounts where people see the same craft or have the same encounter?
That's a great question, a basic question, but a great one. And to a great degree, over the decades, for me, as an independent investigator and as somebody who, again, worked in tandem and still does with other researchers, yes, the patterns of contact and the configuration of machines often repeat. In a classic abduction experience, the individual often experiences communication in their head that's purely telepathic in their own language. And they can think back and get a response. I'm here to just tell you, these are the overwhelming number of reports. For me, the very first one I heard was from my sister Helen. And it has, to put it mildly, fascinated me ever since. As far as seeing similar craft, Chris Evers' first book, which I had the privilege of writing the foreword to, is called The Shape of Things to Come from Beyond. And part of it is an analysis of shapes. And let's take that one more step, because if we're really getting into talking about this, we're talking about machines that are built, that are manufactured, which means that there are locations out there in the cosmos, on some faraway planet, on a moon, on a large asteroid, in domes on the surface, unless they have an atmosphere, or underground. We have underground factories where these machines are built. And that means, just looking at stock shots of Detroit or a large automobile manufacturing facility anywhere around the world, almost all the work now is being done by robots. So do we think for a second that you've got a lot of grays and coveralls on an old-fashioned, Henry Ford Model T assembly line, or that it's a machine process? And I'm going to make an educated guess if that's a given, and I think it is, and probably a number, that unlike Earth people, whose dreams and fantasies and wishes and sublimations are often designed into the vehicles that we drive, and each era has its own kind of thing. They look aerodynamic in many cases, but it's not necessarily because you want that ability to go 200 miles an hour. You're not going to get the chance, and the car can't do it anyway. But there's a lot of psychology going on in, look at the size of pickup trucks right now compared to the size of pickup trucks in America 25 years ago. It's, you can make some pretty serious joking around here about male psychology. At the same time, what I'm saying is I don't think the configuration, the designs of the craft that are observed are designed for some cool look or some pop cultural trend in that civilization. They're designed for functionality, but models probably are updated time to time. Who knows? I don't even know what I'm talking about here, except that there are factories making things that may be 50,000, 500,000 years ahead of us. Take your number. It's all speculative.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, I never actually thought of who's actually making these craft. It's just something I've never crossed my mind. And now that's something else to think about.
I have to tell you, I never thought about it either. And it came up for me about 20 years ago, and it's a story worth sharing. One thing, when you do this research in a hyper-specific area, if you take the work seriously, you're doing it to add to the collective knowledge that we have, not to keep it secret. But oftentimes, and this comes up in certainly other areas of study and research having nothing to do with the UFO phenomena, you hold back certain information because it gives you a checks and balances that's not available to the public. And years ago, Bud Hopkins, Dr. David Jacobs, John Mack, other individuals who really pioneered the area of UFO-related abduction research, one of the things that came up was the metal tables that human beings are examined on. That, it's a functional thing, that there's one or two aspects of it that are memorable if you've seen one or been on one. And to the best of my knowledge, Bud nor Dave, nor anyone that I'm aware of, has ever published those details, which is great. If you're familiar with the material and enough witness testimony, you've got one more thing that you can corroborate. Anyway, what David said to me, we were sitting talking about one thing or another. I think waiting for a train in Philadelphia where he used to live. He's saying, I want you to remember something. Somewhere out there, there's a factory that makes these machines, variations on these UFOs. And there's a division, or there's an assembly line, or there's a corner where they make these tables. And I remember thinking to myself in that moment, holy shit. Well, of course, it's the most obvious thing in the world, but I never thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And it just made it that much more real because it's going on. We don't often think fully through. We're just, me too, kind of gaga on a certain level of that this is still really going on. This is a reality. And I say this fairly regularly. If I ever get to a point where I am incapable of stopping myself and saying, my God, this is really happening. This is not some weird, complex psychological aberration combined with somebody who has sleep paralysis, combined with somebody who has just watched too many science fiction movies, combined. It's really happening.
Yeah.
If I ever lose that, I should not be in this work.
But that's the thing about it too. Like, we're so focused on, they communicated telepathically. It's like, okay, but the fundamentals, like, do they breathe? Do they eat? Do they use the bath? Like, they are still living things, in theory. So they would have to do these things somehow, as far as, biologics as we know it. And that's, it kind of, humanizes them a little bit when you think about things that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are accounts, and some of them may be accurate. There are records of an alleged early autopsy going back to the 40s. And there are other records that may be worthy of our respect. At the same time, with all of the declassified documents that are authentic, that are, many of them are dry as a bone, other ones are like science fiction. It's amazing that they actually wrote what they wrote about this phenomenon, that we can now read it and see it ignored. There's stuff declassified from the 1940s that should be on the front page of every newspaper in the world. I know it's kind of an arcane way to think, but holy shit, we knew this back then, and this paperwork is available. None of the agencies involved deny it. They will never confirm it, but they will never deny it.
No.
There's, the famous, in that series of photos of poor Jesse Marcel being forced to pose with that weather balloon, which is just, people joke about it. It's nonsensical, but most humiliating moment in a decent man's life. That there's a picture in one of that sequence of photos of General, I think it's Roger Ramey, who was instrumental in the cover-up, holding what turns out to be a telegram. And the photographer who took it was a news photographer in Texas named, and this is another thing, how we'll dismiss something because it reminds us of something else and we can joke it away. James Bond Johnson, who was born well before there was even a twinkle in the eye of the author of the very first James Bond story.
Yep.
But he took a series of photographs with a big, 5x5 News Graflex, a wonderful camera. But the technology to actually see that level of clarity was decades away. And when it emerged, people talk about physical evidence, and there's no denying it. It is what it is. They have been able now to do scans that accurately show not all, but some of the words on this cable in his hand.
Yes.
And it's talking about saucer, crash. It's all there. You can read it.
Yeah,
but
it zooms right in, doesn't it?
That's got to be, that's got to be Photoshop.
Some of the writing.
It's
I remember reading
exciting.
I remember reading about that about 6 months ago.
When that story broke,
my God,
that was incredibly exciting. It, for me, that is the kind of thing that should be presented before the House of Representatives right now as they do their homework and learn more about the past. This one thing, when it started, and up until sometime last year, when I think it was one of my senators, Schumer, wrote a correction into the legislation, it was the members of the House that were interested didn't really realize or think about looking beyond 2004, when that news story broke that first captured their interest in the New York Times. Oh, you mean we should go back to 1947?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we saying about when he's stood there and he's holding up this weather balloon. You can see in his face. You don't even have to read. You can see in his face exactly what he's thinking, and that why am I even here? Why am I doing this? We know why he's doing it, but
because he had to.
Yeah.
Briefly, and it's just worth remembering, the officer in charge of the Roswell Army Airfield, Butch Blanchard, a tough son of a bitch, a general, a combat veteran. He got the information, he saw material, and he authorized that the story be released, and it was. What he didn't do, and now it's jaw-dropping to think about, the historic precedent that his order was. He never cleared it with the Pentagon, which I love.
Yes.
Hours later, they caught up with this, and in so many words, they freaked and staged this, the balloon photograph, either the next day, I think, and then started to pound away, and it became a brilliantly effective cover-up for decades. But that's how it began.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, I'd forgot about the telegraph and the close-up on it, and that you could actually read it. That's a big step in the right direction.
Yeah,
and that's another reason for me why Roswell remains kind of a touchstone in this. It's sort of a Rosetta Stone in a way. It has so much material, so much evidence to it. If one wanted to, say, take the equivalent of a semester's course on the UFO story, the UFO cover-up, the UAP phenomena, where it was, where it is now, that would be an important part of the syllabus, I think. It's not going away. At this point in history, the name Roswell has the kind of recognition that Coca-Cola does. And I'm not exaggerating. In no country in the world does that name Roswell, in the context, obviously there are other places named Roswell, not register. And it's a place, and I mean, it's an interesting city, about 50,000 people, and it would be an interesting city in the Southwest if this wasn't the case. But of course, it's that much more so. But I've met people from all over the world who, if they had, the discretionary spending and they were going to go to America, that is high on the list. And it's understandable. It's almost like a pilgrimage if you take the subject seriously.
Oh. Sorry, 1 second. Try just clearing some off the screen. Got a couple more questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
But I'm going to put this one on. You don't have to answer, but I'm gonna ask away because I'm not going to know if I don't. So this is from Midnight Golfer, and he's asking, do you think Bob Lazar is credible?
That's a great question, too. Bob Lazar, if you're one of 3 people in the world who's never heard of him, came forward many years ago as having been employed out at S4, Area 51, and presented credible information to many that, in fact, he was who he purported to be and had the background for it, etc. And then others, worthy of our respect as well, came forward and said, no, this does not make sense based on this research and this empirical fact that I established. Bob Lazar is a perfect example for me of, in my personal romanticized heart of heart on this subject, I want to believe.
Yeah.
I want there to be a Bob Lazar. I want him to be authentic. And you know what? I have no idea. I hope he is. But if he isn't, I'm not going to lose any sleep. This stuff happens, and people go, in power, go to great lengths sometimes to create diversions.
And the thing, he's never changed from what he said from the very beginning to present day.
Pretty
It
rock
always
steady.
remains. This is what I did.
He projects a certain humanity and kindness and down to earthness. If he's a con, he's a very good one.
Yeah,
he'd have quite a bit to lose if he. If he wasn't,
he was. You're humiliated for the rest of your life, and you're a joke.
He was threatened and everything. His family, everything. He was set to lose everything. He's like, doesn't matter. I'm telling you how it is, and he didn't shy away from it. No. As far as we know, we didn't shy away from it.
Although that's one of those things too. It's like, was that his experience? And you can't really say that didn't happen because that was his personal experience.
Yeah. Nicole brings up a very important point here, and it sounds, even more exotic than some of this stuff to somebody who's trying to put all this together. But I am convinced that there are people whose vested interest within the official structure, so to say, has been to convince with technology, with drugs, with different kinds of conditioning, hypnotic regression, that certain things have happened to them that have not happened to them for reasons we, once again, can only make our best guesses about. It's such a screwy map, and people's motivations sometimes are so obscure. And these scenarios that are created are sometimes so effective and so believable, as are certain key individuals who have come and gone in this field over the years. I think a lot of it for us is, we don't realize it when we're doing it, but our beliefs are in part tied to our tolerance for information. I can't believe that. I don't want to believe that. So I'm not going to believe that. And I've got sort of a scientific idea of why I don't believe it. Because if it's true, I am totally creeped out, and I don't even, or I really want to believe this and I want to justify it scientifically. So I'll lean into it when I can and hope I can produce it. But if you're true to yourself, if your investigation turns out to take you to the exact opposite place that you thought it was going to take you, or that you wanted it to take you, then you either do what's right, or you have a crisis of conscience, or you shape your conclusions to go with the facts as you want them to be seen.
That whole confirmation bias.
Yeah. Bingo. That's the exact right term. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Draw your own conclusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are we all right for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Yeah. So this one from Nickname. Would Peter say his personal experience was positive or negative, or is it still confusing? Thank you.
I've never had, I think, what you call, what we're referring to here as an experience. I had a profound sighting when I was a kid with one of my sisters, and I couldn't really deal with it. And that memory was suppressed for many years. When that memory reemerged, it reemerged with a vengeance, and my life has never been the same since. Um, my sister Helen was taken, and it's an area that I just keep coming back to for any number of reasons. But I there were my my involvement in this work, coming from my sighting, coming from my sister sharing information with me about her experience. Good, bad, I don't know. It's led me in a certain direction in my life, with great experiences and not great experiences. And the same way that if I had followed another path in life, I'd have great and not great experiences based on the decision that I made. But I think the question was based on assuming that I was an experiencer per se. I've had some things happen to me that are quirky and memorable, but they're not taken, abduction, anything like that, visitation experiences.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Do you want to do the next one, Nicole?
Yeah. So this is from Fred Flintstone. If we establish a base on Mars, would UFOs be less coy about making contact with us there?
Boy, that's a great question. I think, if we're thinking mechanically, gee, look at those humans. They put all that effort into, traveling this tiny little space for us, but huge thing for them. Let's give them a break. Let's cut them some slack. We'll land. We'll talk. Maybe. Or maybe if that same human mindset is in gear governing our thinking on our new Martian colony of, we've got to be careful. We've got our anti-UFO guns installed here just in case they're not friendly, and wonder why they're not visiting. One can say a reason that they're not visiting is they probably watched every science fiction movie ever made, and the overwhelming number of them, the welcome to Earth is less than warm and cordial.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. So do you think, these different species of aliens communicate with each other?
I never even thought of that question. Why not? Or no, or yes. I have no idea whatsoever.
No.
I've never even thought of that. Maybe.
Because we've got different sightings, different encounters, different abductions with small greys, tall greys, reptilians, praying mantis looking aliens. There must be some sort of communication between them.
It does make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I just can't imagine them all stood or sat in a room, even chatting about what their next thing is gonna be.
You're opening up. I like the way you think, Andy. You really are a free thinker, so to say, in that these are such logical ideas, and if they are advanced enough to create these craft and to come and go with impunity, maybe they're studying us like we would, some species that we find in some remote area in our scientific community. Maybe we're somebody's graduate experiment gone horribly wrong, and they're here to correct for a better mark. Or as more than a few people have suggested over the years, that if you've been bad on your planet, you're going to go to Earth for the next 10 years. You're going to see how good you had it here. This is the kind of insane asylum prison where they send their bad behaviors, or again, that they have a profound relationship of their own with our planet. And maybe they're not, or some of them are not from out there, they're from in here. They live right next to us, 1 dimension away or 8 dimensions away. They're enjoying this conversation or not. They're located, in some more tangible way in caverns miles below us and always have been, or bases under huge bodies of water. The more you study the subject, the more questions you have. And I think what ultimately happens with people is they're so frustrated on a certain level that there are no answers that are hard that you can hold on to. They simply decide to believe certain things that they're most comfortable with, or that they like the best, or that people that they like, and they've got a belief system. Then that's great. They know that these ones come from here and they've been coming this long and their ships are powered by this. And, it's like religion as far as I'm concerned. If you get something out of it, and you don't force me to do anything based on your beliefs, I'm fine with you believing what you want about this phenomena. For me, belief, I know we're not alone. And I'm fascinated by the way that we human beings have dealt with this subject, seemingly from time immemorial, although different cultures have had much more healthy, much more accepting, much more unblocked notions about this. The same way that people of certain personality types deal with it differently. And let's remember also, because it's an area that I have never really been hugely involved in that I started working with someone who attracted people who were having problems with this subject and what had happened to them, or the questions that had come up for them in their experiences. There are a lot of people that have wonderful experiences, that have beatific experiences, positive, life-changing experiences. Do we argue that that's because the good aliens are the ones dealing with them, or the bad aliens have worked out, their PR, and they're seducing these people under the guise of being good aliens? Once again, we believe what we want to believe. I think, Nicole, and you both, the idea of there being so many of them out there with different attitudes and ideas, and relationships toward and with human beings, that we either fall into a belief system, give up on the whole thing, or understand that we're surrounded by mysteries and we can do our best to satisfy them to our own satisfaction. And that's as good as it gets sometimes.
Sorry, just a quick follow-on question from that. Because if these ETs are coming from wherever and they're coming meeting humans to study us and that, what's not to say they're not doing that to these other species, and they're doing exactly the same thing to us with them? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Right. It's one more great question that I have no answer for.
They could have their little zoo with, the grays over here, the green men over here. There's the humans.
But then there might be like 3 or 4 different groups of them that do get on really well.
Well,
I don't know.
They could all visit each other's zoos.
We live in a world where completely different species get along just fine when left to their own devices. And other ones are natural enemies. I think if we look to patterns in the natural world in helping us maybe to understand or solve, not even solve, but just wrap our head a bit closer around some of these questions, it's about as good as we can do. There's a very well-known American anthropologist, Margaret Mead, who is work now being reappraised in a very interesting way in the anthropology community. But decades ago, she was asked about the UFO phenomena and what did she think about these intelligences. And wise as well as smart woman, one of the things that she said in so many words was, I'm not an alien. I have no idea how they think. The best I can do as a human being and an anthropologist is tell you that if the situation were reversed and I was a visitor from another planet and I came here and I started to observe life on Earth, that's what would fascinate me. I would want to observe everything that I could, learn everything that I could. Why do these beings behave the way that they do, etc.? And I thought, you know what? That makes perfect sense to me. We can only reason the way we can reason, and maybe that helps.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Do you want to do the last one, Nicole?
Yeah. So this is
sorry.
From a Facebook user, a mystery Facebook user, asking who would benefit disclose? Would disclose benefit? Would it be the common man in the street, governments? If the aliens share technologies, medicines, who would it benefit?
A fabulous question to end on. It depends, obviously, on a number of factors. If this information were somehow just put out there on the internet in terms that every human being could understand potentially, in terms of helping us solve problems, physical, emotional, political, historic, it would be a boon to humanity that we can't even imagine. If it were to filter through officialdom and they would be the ones to benefit from this information, you can bet, number one, it would result in a whole new generation of different kinds of weapons and ways for people to kill each other, because that's the nature of man. And sadly, in terms of facing the unknown, and this is emblematic of the unknown, I love the idea of, well, the technologies, and this is, again, an argument. If we had all this information right now, or saying that we do have it, you can't just start to use it, because the petrochemical industry would collapse, the stock market would collapse, people who take extreme positions in terms of theology would go crazy. There's too much that would be out of control. If the knowledge were transposed directly to human beings, how to, grow crops better. Live radio.
You are caller number 5.
It's Preston Dennett.
So it's, if they want to give us, a huge body of information that we can only imagine to help us solve our problems, great. If it falls into the hands of, we back engineer a crashed craft to such a degree that we have figured out its weapon system. Stanton Friedman often would say, for governments, that's what it's about. Whoever can crack that technology first and control a whole new generation of weapon system wins. Not a great way to think, but unfortunately part of the way human beings in the world is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Hey, I really enjoyed being with you guys, and
fun.
Thank you for coming on.
Glad to come back.
Yeah, anytime.
You are more than welcome. So,
and let's hope that baby is born healthy.
Yes.
And it's not a hybrid. It could be a hybrid.
It could
be. Who knows? Imagine that. That'd be a show on its own, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah. We'll have to interview it in a couple of years, because it'll be talking by then. Well, that alien
thank you, Peter, for coming on. It's been absolutely
Yeah,
amazing, as always. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Peter. Was it 2 years ago in Hull?
It was
it's about 18 months ago.
Year and a half, exactly. And
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be seeing each other again in about 6 months.
Yes, definitely. And I do need to buy me ticket, or Chris will have a meltdown. So I'll get it done. So
and
yeah,
you're
thank
in my
you
neck of
again.
the woods, so hopefully we'll meet each other soon, Peter.
Yeah,
that would be great, Nicole.
Mhm.
Can make that happen, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you need to.
Okay, you guys,
really do.
take it easy. And again, anybody that wants to follow what I'm doing, the best way to do it is my radio show, which is on Monday nights on KUNX Digital Broadcasting. And you can find them all, the past shows that I've done on YouTube, the ones I've done with KUNX since I went over to them in August, are all archived and can be watched anytime. But I've got about 300 hours of audio programming from when I was with KGRA before them, and also listenable on Spotify and all those platforms. Otherwise, a pleasure meeting you, Nicole. Great seeing you again, Andy. My best to our other co-hosts.
You too.
And see you around the campus.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Definitely. All right. Look after yourself, Peter. Speak soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I have one thing real quick, if you don't mind me doing a quick plug.
Go on.
All right. I am in a couple hours, actually, if anybody is going to be up, going to be 2 hours, actually, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be doing a guest on a show, TDAU.
Oh.
Is Hickory the Drunk Magician.
What?
So I wonder, Hickory the Drunk Magician.
Was that the one I shared the other day? The guy in the top hat? Is that somebody else?
I think that's somebody else. It's not Freddie Valentine, but maybe he knows Freddie Valentine.
Well, I'm still waiting to hear back from him. I did contact him directly, but not heard anything.
It seems like they'd run in the same circle, so I'm going to ask.
Oh, well, yeah. Why not?
It's like a comedy kind of podcast. It's not paranormal, but we'll be talking paranormal.
Cool. Well, send me the link. Yeah, send me the link, and if you do send it me on Messenger, then I can share it.
Yeah.
I will try and stay awake, but I can't guarantee it. Oh, no, that's good. Oh, so also, for those that don't know, Nicole is sending over some crochet ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do the giveaways, I can do the ones to the UK, and then Nicole can do the ones in the US.
Yep.
So we're going to get that. You've not sent them yet, have you? Or have you? No.
No, I suck. I'm still trying to make a bunch, so.
Yeah, because it's not going to be worth it, is it, if you just send one at a time?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so we've got that.
I've got a few made so far.
Sorry?
I've got a few made so far.
All right, cool. Global Skywatch week on Saturday around 6 o'clock. Friday, we've got Dr. Ian Rubinstein, who is a doctor in North London, near to where the Enfield poltergeist happened. And I've not got my calendar on, so I can't tell you anything else. Oh, on Sunday, we've got Staticon.
So Sunday. Yeah, Sunday is
Staticon with 100 people.
Only four. Ron, Lourdes, Tony, and Cherie.
Yeah, so there's going to be at least 6 of us on there, so that's going to be good. That's 5 o'clock UK time, 12 EST, and then whatever time PST, I don't know, 3 hours less than that.
If you're not in UK time or EST, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I can't work it out. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Not got anything else to add. Oh, we're going to do the Drunken podcast as well, aren't we?
Yeah, when are we doing it?
We can do. I was thinking we can do shots on that one. We'll have drinks, but then do shots with questions, or someone says a trigger word, and then I'm gonna lose straight away. We know this. And you're not allowed to have a bingo book.
Why not?
No.
Oh,
No,
man.
I don't mind. I might even do one. You never know.
Yeah.
I think we I think we all should.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's everything. So we're back on Friday, same time. So yeah, get your questions ready. He's an actual practicing GP. He's still a doctor, and he uses his mediumship with some of his patients. Obviously, he gets permission first. So I think we're going to be talking about that amongst other stuff. So
Awesome.
that's it. That's all I've got. So have a wonderful 2 days, and we will see you on Friday at the same time. So
Bye, everybody.
goodbye. See you later.